They treated me like royalty, warm smiles, open arms, endless praise. I never suspected a thing. But everything unraveled when my wife's niece casually showed me a photo. One innocent picture exposed their entire fraud scheme and revealed that I was never family. I was the next target. Before we delve into the story, tell us if you've ever been a victim of fraud. Tell us your story in the comments section. Kindly support us with a like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Now, let's go. I still remember the first time I met my wife's family. Warm smiles, outstretched arms, a feast waiting on the table. They called me son before I even got the chance to call them in-laws. Her father gave me cigars, her mother hugged me tight, and her uncles clapped me on the back like I'd returned from war. It felt surreal, like I'd stepped into a dream where I was finally appreciated, finally wanted. After a lonely childhood and years of struggling through fake friendships and transactional love, this was exactly what I needed. Or so I thought. What struck me most was how quickly they welcomed me, not just as a husband to their daughter, but as a vital part of their family. They told me they admired how I'd built my business from scratch. They said I was a man of vision, someone they could trust, someone they were so proud to be connected to. I soaked it all in. They listened when I talked about my ideas. They asked questions that made me feel intelligent and respected. Her cousins called me the golden guy. Her and even joked that I was too good for their family. I laughed then. But later, that joke would feel like a warning I didn't hear in time. Our wedding was grand, entirely funded by her side. Her father insisted on handling everything: venue, decor, even the guest list. "Let us honor you," he said. "You deserve this." I didn't argue. My parents had passed on, and I had no close relatives left. So I accepted their generosity and played the part, the humble, grateful son-in-law. But underneath the charm, something was off. I didn't see it then. I was too blinded by love, praise, and the idea of finally having a real family. Looking back, I can't believe how easily I missed the signs. But that picture, changed everything. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon, about 4 months into the marriage. We were visiting her uncle's estate, an extravagant place with a pool, garden statues, and walls lined with family portraits. While the adults prepared lunch inside, I stayed in the lounge with her young niece, Olivia. She was barely 10 but sharp, curious, and chatty. She showed me her new tablet and began flipping through her photo album, narrating every snapshot. I smiled, only half listening, until my eyes caught a photo I wasn't supposed to see. My heart skipped. There, tucked between beach pictures and birthday cakes, was a group photo of her uncles, her father, and a man I recognized instantly. I hadn't seen him in years. He was in prison the last time I checked, and he was someone I'd once reported for embezzling from a tech investor friend. I froze, my hands clenched without me realizing. That man, Robert Mendez, wasn't just any criminal. He had orchestrated a sophisticated fraud ring that targeted small business owners like myself back when I was struggling to build my company. I knew because I'd helped put him away. And now here he was, smiling beside my in-laws like he belonged there. Olivia looked confused when I didn't laugh at the next picture. She asked if something was wrong. I told her no and handed the tablet back gently, but inside, my mind was racing. What were they doing posing with Robert? Was it an old picture? Were they related? Or had this all, our love, our wedding, their kindness, been a calculated trap? I excused myself and stepped outside to breathe. My thoughts spiraled in all directions. Had they known who I was before I even met my wife? Had they planned this from the start, earning my trust just to exploit it later? I couldn't believe it, didn't want to believe it. But my instincts told me otherwise. The way they asked subtle questions about my business. The way her uncle once offered to manage one of my properties to ease my workload. I had dismissed it all as harmless affection. But now, I wasn't so sure. I knew one thing, though. I had to find out the truth, and fast. I didn't sleep that night. My wife lay peacefully beside me, but my mind refused to rest. I kept replaying the photo in my head, the way Robert's arm was draped casually around her uncle, the relaxed familiarity in their posture. That wasn't a man they feared or distanced themselves from. That was family. That was trust. And if they trusted him, then everything they'd shown me could have been staged. I told myself I needed answers, but I couldn't confront anyone just yet. If I was right, then showing my hand too early would only make them tighten their grip. If I was wrong, well, I prayed I was wrong. The next morning, I started digging, but quietly. I opened my laptop in the study and searched Robert Mendez again. Last I'd heard, he was sentenced to 8 years, but apparently he was released early on a technicality. I found a few obscure online articles, some local mentions, and a whisper of a lawsuit that mysteriously disappeared. It didn't say where he went after that, but a LinkedIn profile, now deleted, listed a consulting firm in Florida under an alias. I made a few calls to old contacts in my industry, using casual language. One of them remembered that my wife's cousin had shown up at a private tech pitch a year ago, trying to raise funds for a startup incubator. Another contact said he once spotted her uncle with a man who looked exactly like Robert Mendez, but with a new name. That was all I needed to hear. I started connecting dots I'd ignored before. The way her family always seemed to coincidentally know someone interested in my work. The way her aunt had asked, over dinner, how I protected my company from insider threats. At the time, it felt like admiration. But now, every compliment felt like a study, every question like data collection. I searched deeper and found multiple business names tied to her uncle, most of them dissolved. But one active company name showed up again and again on property leases, fake venture websites, and obscure investment blogs. I followed the trail until I stumbled on a chilling truth. That company was registered under the same address as one of my own warehouses. The one I rarely checked. The one her cousin once offered to help manage. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. I wasn't paranoid. I was being watched, studied, slowly cornered. And they were close to making their move. If they hadn't already. That's when I realized I couldn't afford to wait. I had to play along a little longer, but on my terms now. If they were setting a trap, I'd let them think I was still walking into it. But I'd be the one pulling the wires from behind the curtain. From that point on, I became an actor in my own life. I smiled when I needed to, nodded politely when her father suggested we merge assets for tax efficiency, and laughed at the uncle's dry jokes while mentally documenting every word he said. I pretended to be relaxed, trusting, the same grateful son-in-law they thought they could manipulate. But behind every gesture, I was running quiet audits, calling discreet lawyers, and moving key documents out of reach. I wasn't just gathering proof. I was building a silent firewall. If they came for me, they'd find nothing left to take. They thought I was asleep. I was wide awake. To maintain the illusion, I invited them over more frequently. I poured wine and let them talk. That's when the cracks started to show. Her cousin let slip that her uncle was about to land a big deal with a startup investor. When I pressed gently, he mentioned a name, my investor. A man I'd known since my early days in business. That confirmed it. They weren't just circling. They were aiming to replicate the same con Robert had pulled years ago, using family ties to soften the target, then hitting with false contracts, bad deals, and vanishing funds. What they didn't know was that I'd already warned my investor. I even set a trap, a fake project with phantom figures, just detailed enough to bait them. Meanwhile, I quietly reached out to Olivia's mother. The only member of the family who had always stayed a bit distant, almost reluctant in her interactions. I framed the conversation as casual concern for Olivia's tech exposure, but then gently pivoted. You ever wonder who her uncle's really associate with? I asked. Her expression changed. She didn't answer directly, but left me with a loaded sentence. Don't ever trust anyone who smiles too much when you're winning. That was all I needed. She knew something. Maybe not everything, but enough to keep herself at a safe distance. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with a fraud ring. I was walking through a family-built web, each person either complicit by silence, or already caught and pretending not to be. The real challenge wasn't proving their scheme. It was waiting long enough for them to make their final move, so I could make mine louder, cleaner, and irreversible. I wanted them exposed not just to me, but to everyone. I wanted the courts to know, the investors to see, the world to hear. But most of all, I wanted them to understand what it felt like to play a game thinking you're the smartest one in the room, only to realize too late that the fool you thought you were tricking had been controlling the board all along. 2 weeks later, I invited the whole family to dinner at a private club downtown, one they had long admired but never had access to. I told them I wanted to celebrate a new partnership opportunity, and they came dressed like they'd already won. Her father wore his best gold watch. Her uncles looked smug in matching blazers, and her cousin brought a fake briefcase just for effect. I smiled through it all, shook hands like I was signing my soul away, and handed out what they thought were prototype investment packets. Inside were high-level summaries of a fake tech rollout, complete with inflated projections, fake internal memos, and a tempting opportunity to invest early and privately. I told them I wanted this deal to be family first. Their eyes sparkled like kids offered candy in a closed room. They bid instantly. Her uncle asked if he could wire funds in advance to secure a larger stake. Her cousin asked for access to back-end credentials to help manage operations remotely. My wife, seated to my right, squeezed my hand and smiled like she'd finally found her way into the heart of my business. I wanted to feel pain, betrayal, rage, heartbreak, but all I felt was cold clarity. I looked across the table and saw them for what they truly were. Not family, not even thieves. Just a syndicate wrapped in expensive clothes and fake affection, mistaking charm for intelligence. They thought I was naive, but they had walked into a theater without realizing I'd written the script. What they didn't know was that every word at that table was being recorded, audio, video, even device location pings. I'd hired a private security firm specializing in white-collar crime surveillance, and they were stationed discreetly in the next room, monitoring everything. Each file they handed back to me later was another nail in the coffin. Verbal admission of intent to defraud, willingness to access systems without consent, even clear plans to funnel money into shell companies. By dessert, her father toasted to a new legacy of power. I toasted too. Only mine was for the patience it took to catch them all red-handed. I shook each of their hands again at the end, storing the fingerprints I knew would match devices they touched that evening. As they walked away into the parking lot, laughing and unaware, I leaned back in my chair and took a deep breath. I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to burn their entire operation to the ground, legally and permanently. And when the headlines hit, when the investors pulled out, and when the indictments dropped, I'd be the one watching from the front row. The fallout began exactly 9 days after that dinner. I hadn't spoken to my wife in over a week. I told her I was swamped with follow-up meetings and closing deals from the Family First investment plan. She believed me, just like they all did. Meanwhile, I was finalizing a well-documented, airtight fraud report with my legal team and the private firm I'd hired. Everything they'd touched, said, and signed was cataloged, verified, and legally time-stamped. We had digital forensics on her uncle's attempts to hack into my back-end systems. We had voice recordings of her father offering bribes. We even had screenshots of her cousin opening a dummy wallet I had created just for him, a trap, designed to trigger a tracking protocol the moment it was accessed. He accessed it. And now, I knew exactly where every cent of their money was moving. I met with my longtime investor and walked him through the entire case. At first, he was stunned, then livid. "You were sitting on this and smiling through dinner?" he asked. I nodded. I told him patience isn't weakness, it's strategy. Within 24 hours, he'd pulled his funding from their connected shell companies and blacklisted every known alias. Then came the second wave. My legal team submitted the fraud documentation directly to the Financial Crimes Division. Within 3 days, subpoenas were issued. Within 5, assets were frozen. Within a week, the news broke. The headlines were brutal. Prominent family accused in elaborate business fraud scheme involving son-in-law's empire. Their names were everywhere. Photos from our wedding were plastered across news sites. Their polished, smiling faces became symbols of betrayal. The empire they tried to hijack now had a spotlight they couldn't hide from. Her father tried calling me 17 times in one day. Her uncle sent long, desperate emails about misunderstandings. Her cousin emailed me once. No subject line, no message. Just an attachment of a photo from that dinner, with the caption, "You set us up." I didn't respond. They were right. I had set them up, but only because they had made the first move and underestimated the man they targeted. My wife showed up at my office unannounced, mascara streaked, hands shaking. "I didn't know," she kept saying. I swear I didn't know, but I had already seen the emails she'd sent to her uncle. I'd already read the message where she said, "He trusts me. Just a little more time and we're in." I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at her and said that time ran out weeks ago. She tried to shift blame, to say she only did it for the family, that she thought it was a harmless investment play. But her voice cracked when I asked why she needed to dig through my files in the middle of the night, or why she never once defended me when her uncle joked about taking over the tech world. I told her the divorce papers had already been signed and filed. I didn't want anything from her. No money, no explanation, just space. Complete, permanent distance. And I made sure that every contract she had ever signed while under my company's access had now been revoked, invalidated, and flagged for legal review. She left quietly, knowing any further word could be used against her. The day her family was officially charged, I stood in front of my team and announced a new division. One dedicated to ethical startups and whistleblower protection. I named it Olivia's Light, not after my wife's niece, but after the moment of light that picture brought into the darkness they tried to hide. Funny how a child's curiosity shattered an entire web of lies. And I made sure that part of the story went public too. That the downfall of a fraudulent dynasty began not with an investigation, but with a little girl showing her uncle a picture she thought he'd find funny. Now, as I sit back and reflect, I realize this wasn't just about revenge. It was about clarity, about reclaiming power not by shouting, but by staying silent until the truth screamed on its own. They thought they were kings. They thought I was just another pawn. But I'd been playing chess, not checkers. And this time, the board belonged to me. If this story hit a nerve or made you think twice about trust, loyalty, and silent power, make sure to subscribe for more real-life inspired tales of betrayal and redemption. Your support helps us bring these raw, emotional journeys to life, and there's always another one coming. Stay tuned.